Early on in his ministry, Jesus set out to familiar places to find disciples. And the kind of people that he approached were normal, everyday kind of people. Jesus invited them to stop what they were doing and to follow him. That's right, you heard me. Jesus invited normal, everyday kind of people to follow him and be his disciples. What would be intriguing about normal people such as myself, though? Because what I know about normal people is that we make mistakes. There's a story in Mark chapter 8 that captures the kind of mistakes that we're capable of. See, Jesus has been sitting among the disciples that he's called, and he's just shared with them of what is to come for him in the future. That is, that he is the Son of Man is to be put to death. And of course, the first time that the disciples hear this news, they're a little mystified, confused even. One of the disciples, Peter, takes this news in a particularly poor fashion. He's so upset by this that he pulls Jesus aside and begins to correct Jesus. That's right, the Son of God is receiving correction for one of his own students. I can imagine Peter saying things like, "Now, Jesus, I heard you put it like this, but what I think you meant to say was..." I can picture Jesus sitting there patiently, waiting to cut in. And his moment comes and he flips the table on Peter and begins to rebuke him. He says, "Satan, get behind me. For you are not concerned with divine things, but things that are of concerns to humans." Did you hear that? Maybe if you were able to hear past Jesus calling Peter Satan, you heard that as Jesus corrects him, he says, don't be concerned with this human matter, but instead be focused on divine things, the things of God. So what are these things of God? Well, this is anything that brings about the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is declared and it is present in the pursuing of justice, the showing of mercy, and in the loving in one's neighbor. You see, this kingdom work is the work of Jesus. Jesus' work is to declare that the kingdom of God has come near. And not only is this his work, but it's the work of his disciples as well. Now here's the interesting thing about work. At this time in history, your job was wrapped up in the family business. The head of the house, usually the male father figure, had a job, and that job would be passed down generation to generation, and they would all partake to make sure that there was enough to provide for the needs of the family. If we look at Jesus and a couple of the disciples, we'll see a few examples. For instance, there's the brothers James and John, the sons of Zebedee, that Jesus called to be disciples who were fishermen. Yeah, that's right. Jesus found them out on the Sea of Galilee fishing with their dad when they were called. Jesus himself, we know, learned the skill of carpentry from his adoptive father Joseph, who's the husband of his mother Mary. And then Jesus in his ministry went on to do the work of God's kingdom. And when Jesus called the disciples, they left behind their old lives and began to follow and do the work of Jesus in the kingdom. And when they started this, not only did they become disciples, but they became children of God. Because you see, Jesus, as a son of God, was born into doing the work of God's kingdom, the work that God has set about from the dawn of time. And in the invitation to join him, the disciples stepped in to the family as well and joined the business of pursuing justice, showing mercy, and loving their neighbor. See, this is the same opportunity that is afforded us. We today can still become disciples of Jesus Christ and children of the one true God. As the Apostle Paul puts it in the letter to the Galatians, we put on Christ and we join the family business as heirs to the kingdom. Not just heirs, but co-laborers with Christ in the business. That is, we are to pursue justice, share mercy, and love our neighbors in communion.